OG. Back with another formation breakdown. This time we're going over the 4-4-1-1 midfield. And if you watch my previous tactical breakdowns, this is different in one major way, and that is the starting position of my wingers, right? Whether it's the 5-2-3, which is still my main formation, or any of the 4-3-3 variations, usually the wingers are set up more in line with the striker, right? This time, in this 4-4-1-1 midfield, they're set up in line with your midfielders. So more defensive starting position. Now, if you haven't noticed yet, you could absolutely utilize this as a park the bus formation with 10 players behind the ball. You could even pull your striker back, and you have 2 blocks of players now that your opponent has to get by. I don't utilize it like that. I utilize it where now defensively, instead of just having my 3 midfielders and my 4 backs, now I have my wingers that can also either get behind the ball, right, or provide back pressure. Now, what this does is it can overwhelm your opponent. It's especially good when you're playing against a good attacking opponent, because now, if you have your wingers behind the ball, it's just that much more difficult for them to find a passing or dribbling lane. Or if you want to provide back pressure, now you just have 2 more players in your wingers with their natural starting position being more defensive. You have just 2 more players that can come back and provide pressure to maybe rush or force your opponent into mistakes when they're attacking. Then you can win the ball and go from there. Now, if you haven't watched my previous tactic videos, another thing I like to do is first go through each tactic so you can note it down. Then go through each player duty so you can note it down. After that, I'll go back through each tactic and duty more in detail. The reason I do that is because, first off, I want you to get an idea, an overview of how this formation works. So you can see just right off the bat if it's a formation that can suit either your style of play or a style of play that you're looking to adopt. Now, once you do that, I want you to take these tactics and tweak them how you need to fit what you're looking for. If you're not sure, simply take these tactics, go into a local game, or 2 or 3 or however many you need, play with this system, and then see how you could tweak the tactical setup or each duty to fit the player and make sure he's playing how you need him to play to suit your play style, right? Never just copy and paste and go out and use anybody, whether it's me or anybody else's tactical setup, because remember, that setup's going to be for that player. I just am providing how this formation helped me, how I utilize it, other ways it can be used, and then if it helps you, great, but always tweak it to fit your style of play. Now, maybe sometimes the exact setup I use is going to fit yours. Well, that's great, but definitely double check that first. Okay, so the one major area we talked about where this formation is great defensively, just with the sheer numbers behind the ball that you can get because of the more defensive starting setup. However, there's still a cam in this formation, still your 2 wingers, and obviously your striker. So in the attack, you can absolutely get the same numbers forward. You can still get a good, formidable attack going out of this formation, which is why I like it. The one thing you have to be aware of is now you just don't have 2 wingers that are in line with your striker further up the pitch. So when you win the ball, you can't just immediately have outlets to pass to. When you win the ball, since those wingers are more defensive starting out, you have to be a little more patient in your build-up and in creating a way to get the ball into the attack. That's the one thing you might have to get used to going from either a 5-2-3 or any of the 4-3-3s. So you're definitely going to test that out and make sure that that works for you, just being a little more patient in the build-up with your wingers being more defensive to start, right? So let's go over these tactics in detail. My defensive style I have on balanced. My depth of defense I also have on balance with a setting of 5. The reason I go for that is because I don't want my defense too deep, but I also don't want them too high up, especially with the L1 triangle switch right now. I don't want them reeling backwards. I found that 5 is actually a perfect setup for this and pretty much any formation that I'm using, really. Maybe sometimes I'll cheat them higher, Maybe sometimes I'll cheat them more back, but typically speaking, I keep my depth on 5. Okay? Now, width of defense. This is up to you. Obviously, with the meta, with the L1 triangle switch, it goes all the way across field. Your wingbacks are typically going to have to pull out and mark that switch, and you're going to have to pull a center mid back so you can keep the rest of your defenders in line. Until that gets patched, you can either go more wide right off the bat so you have less area to cover on those big switches across field, less area to, cover with your wingbacks, or you can go more narrow so there's not holes in your defense. That's up to you. I go with right in the middle again with the balance 5 setting. Attacking style, I always go long ball or fast attack. Me personally, I don't see much difference between the two, so I just stick with fast attack, but the reason I go with one of those two is because it creates good runs in the attack, which is what I want. Players in the box, I go with a balance setting, but I go with 6. You can go with whatever you want. The reason why I go with the balance setting of 6 is because I always do different variations of runs with my striker, rarely switching off of him as far as options for who I'm looking for on the corner. And in the balance 6 players in the box, it just works for me. Tweak that how you see fit for you, work on different numbers, and then settle on the one that works best. Now with width of attack, I actually go with wide, where I typically go with balance. Now it's wide 8, not wide 9 or 10. It's the one closest to balance. But why I choose wide in my width of attack in this formation is simply because once I win the ball, I want to be able to get it across the field to the opposite side. And the more width I have, the more space I have once I make that switch to then get numbers forward. So I win the ball, then alleviate the pressure by getting it across the field, then start getting numbers forward after that. So let's go with individual duties. Goalkeeper, no matter what formation, always balance and passive. Because active and aggressive, really with goalkeepers right now, it can work sometimes, but a lot of times your goalkeeper will just haphazardly run forward and the opponent will essentially have an open goal and you'll give up goals you otherwise wouldn't have. I hope they fix that, but for now, that's why I have them on passive and balance. Wingbacks. Attacking with is balance. Attacking support, don't cross the halfway line. Defensive style is holding position. And pass interceptions is situational. Again, if you watch my previous videos, I do not utilize my wingbacks for anything but defense. Just don't find them in the attack very helpful right now. So you can use them going forward if they help you, if it makes sense for you. Maybe it does. For me, I like them staying in line with my center backs and simply doing their defensive duties, right? So for my center backs, I never touch them. Same with if you play EAFC, it's the same thing because they're always set up on the right settings. They just stay back and do their job. Now, for me, in EAFC was different. I use my wingbacks more in the attack. In UFL, you can be rest assured that almost always, unless it changes in some patch or someone has some tactic that they can show the defenders are useful moving up, you'll always see my wingbacks. The same thing as my center backs in UFL, which is the most defensive setup. If for some reason I want to manually make them go forward, I'll manually trigger them, or if they're on the dribble, they're on the dribble. Both my wingbacks are decent dribblers. That does happen, but so few and far between that their initial settings, I'm not going to take out of just the most balanced / defensive setup, right? Now, moving into the center mids and cam in this formation. This is where there's always options, particularly in this formation with the cam, okay? But starting with the CMs, I use them, they might as well say CDM on there, right? Same with my 4 backs. I want those 2 CMs just sitting more in that position in front of the center backs. If I want to move them manually, that's fine. I can manually trigger them, although I probably never have. If I do, it might be one time or twice ever, right? So their settings always going to be the most defensive setup, mainly because I want them sitting in front of the center back so they can quickly get back, right? And preferably, honestly, if I could, I would always have those two in the CDM setup, because the closer to the defense, the better, because it's less room that they have to move back, especially right now with that long switch. It's less room that they have to move back. And then I can always be more patient in the attack to let them get forward. But in this formation, they're set up in between, right? They're not cams, they're not CDMs, so you have to do some manual work getting them back. I rarely ever will pull them forward anyway. So they're pretty much okay. That's not much work to do with CM instead of CDM. It's not so much so that you can't use this formation with because it doesn't have CDMs. You can set them up defensively. You see their attacking supports do not cross the halfway line. Crosses into the box, nope, they do not go forward. They hold their position. In pass interceptions, it's situational because I want them to keep their shape. If you want to move them more aggressive, you absolutely can, but you have to just be ready. If you don't use that situational setup, they will run forward and run forward out of position, and I just don't find it useful. So going into my cam now, some players utilize that cam as a second striker. I like having that cam as more of a anchor in the attack, meaning he's not up there with my wingers or striker, but he is providing an option further back, okay? So every once in a while, maybe he'll take a long shot, but right now, long shots just aren't very good. The goalie saves them almost every time, no matter how good that player is with long shots. Like I had Valverde in the past. No matter how good of a shot he took, the goalie saved it, whereas my curling shots from my wingers were way higher percentage to be goals. So that's why I utilize that player more in that anchor role. He could be useful if you put him with attacking runs instead of, attacking style, either short pass or supporting the attack. He could be useful with attacking runs as almost like a player that defenders aren't really paying attention to. Next thing you know, he makes a run. Everyone's paying attention to your striker, and he's open, right? That could absolutely work, especially if you have a more attacking-minded cam in there. Like I've seen some people, for instance, use CR7 once they added the cam position, right, with one skill boost. They use him in the cam role as like a second striker and also good for knocking down head balls. So that cam role has a wide variety of ways you can use him, but you see how I use him there. The short pass attacking style, he is available for crosses. I do want him getting in the box for crosses, but on the defensive side, he's dropped back. I want him helping the two CMs in the center. Defending, pass interceptions, like usual, is situational. So let's go on to our wingers now. Now for our wingers, it's very similar on the attacking side as the 5-2-3 or any 4-3-3 variation. Like I said earlier, the main difference is just their starting point. Just like the cam, though, you can choose to make those wingers more defensive, even on the attacking side. Like this could be your defensive setup to close out a game where you literally have those wingers sitting there, just sitting back, almost like second wing backs, right? You'll have to do more manual work if you want that too on top of the settings, but this lineup absolutely does fit that, right? You can even pull your striker back if you wanted to, and this, like I said, could be your closeout formation, because when you see it in game, it does create this wall of players that the opponent sees. It's intimidating looking. You can tell it's going to be hard to break down, and it absolutely is, and your settings can just further that, right? Now for me, once we get to winning the ball, now it's all bets are off. Let's get up. Let's get our numbers that we want up and go score a goal, right? You can see it's under my attacking variation. The reason why I switched to this is I just wanted to experiment more on the defensive side. Having those wingers closer to the central midfielders where they're naturally just in a position where I can manually pull them behind the ball to create more numbers to block passing lanes and dribbling lanes, and or they can provide more back pressure. Now, what I mean by that, say there's a long L1 triangle switch to a winger, you pull your wing back out to mark that player. Well, now you can also have that winger rushing back to now either pressure that winger to try to create a mistake from, or like I said, getting them behind the ball. Maybe your wing back rushes out to mark that winger on that long switch, but now because of their setup being closer defensive, you can pull your winger almost as a more in defensive position wingback. Bottom line is it just provides more numbers on the defensive side to make it harder for your opponent to get chances to score, right? So when you look at the wingers, how I have them set up in this particular formation, attacking style is under attacking runs. Attacking width is close to the middle, but I may switch that to close to the sideline simply because, like I said, once I win the ball, I want to be able to have them as far out wide as possible so I can alleviate the pressure and switch the ball to the other side. Then I can worry about getting numbers forward, right? Why I have it close to the middle is because they're naturally further wide in their starting positions, and I want them to get up there to support Holland. So crosses, of course, I make them available for crosses always. So these settings for me will naturally have them get pushed up the field. Defensive support, I actually have them on balance as opposed to stay up front. Pass interceptions, I have them situational like all my other midfielders. Now, the defensive support is where you can make the changes and where for me it's different than my other formations. I typically have my wingers on stay up front, so they're working right along with Holland, and so they're immediately available as passing options up the field. In this formation, they're going to be more defensive, so you're going to have to learn to immediately hit Holland, or if for some reason your opponent's good at quickly switching players defensively, and they mark out Holland, let's say, that's where you're going to have to work on finding patience on the ball so you can get it out of pressure once you win the ball, right? And they immediately try to win it back. You can get the ball out of pressure, then work on getting those wingers in that cam further up the field to now getting attacking opportunity to try to score, right? So for me, attacking styles, attacking runs, close to the middle right now is my attacking width setting. Probably change that to close to the sideline so there's more width. Crosses, of course, they're available. Defensive setup is balanced. Now you can put yours stay up front, but in my opinion, if you're going to put them under stay up front, you might as well go with a 4-3-3 variation then, right? The main reason this formation is good is because they have this more defensive starting point, and if you have them on balanced defensive support, they're at least going to be closer to the defense to be able to help out. Why I don't have them under defensive support drop back is because, like I said, I'm not using this just to close out a game and keep a lead where I want everyone defensive. I have them on balance because I still want them in an area where they can quickly get forward once we win the ball and support Holland, and then Joe Ellington can quickly then get up from his defensive duties and sit in there and provide an option in that more anchor attacking role. So, again, the one big, this is the one big play that can give you an example of how this system can work in the attack, similar to like a 4-3-3, but it's also something that I haven't gone over. And this particular play, if you work on it, can really help you. So Joe Ellington in that cam role as like more of an anchor instead of second striker. Imagine Mbappe or Messi gets a long switch or just has the ball on the wing, and your defense is doing a good job of marking Holland. He's just not in a position where you can get him the ball right now. Even the L1 square lob cross, you feel like, he's not in a good position to get it. What am I gonna do? So obviously you could work it back to like your wing back and just totally reset, or you can play either a regular cross or lob cross, depending on how he's marked, into Joe Ellington, and then he can either play a header pass to Holland or to the other side to Messi. And then Holland, if it's played him, can turn and shoot, or if it's played across to Messi, he can then take a quick touch inside and shoot typically, or if he has to, he can receive it and then maybe play it back to Joe Ellington, or play it into Holland, who can then turn and shoot. But the bottom line is that Joe Ellington in that anchor role can be a major help in creating an attack, right? If things stale out, he's an absolute beast, or anybody in that cam role can be an absolute beast in still creating opportunities, to recycle and restart and still spark a goal-scoring chance after an attack has failed, or not failed, but is staled. It's only failed once the defenders have won the ball and they're going the other way. But if you're able to recognize that you need to recycle and it's not looking good where you're at currently, then that's fine. And that cam and that supporting role can really help that. So go ahead and give these things a try. Tweak the formation how you see fit. But I definitely would say the 4-4-1-1 midfield formation is viable as a meta formation like many, right? That's where it's different from the EAFC. There's a lot more ways you can play, a lot more formations that you can use that would be considered meta. What matters is you tweaking the formation to fit your play style and making sure you're using the formations that you can get the most out of and that are going to help you the most. So with that being said, give it a try, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.